Welcome to the next episode of Brandland. I'm Garrett Justice, and today I'm joined by Christy Barnes, who's the Vice President of Marketing at Camp Bow Wow out in Colorado. Christy, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. It's so great to have you on the show today. First thing I want to know is any big snowboarding or skiing plans there in Colorado coming up soon?
Yes, I am going to Vail today, heading up this afternoon. They have about a foot of new snow in the past couple of days, so I am ready for that fresh powder.
Love it. I think all of the rest of us are jealous. If you have to be somewhere where it's cold, at least you can kind of, enjoy that, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's great to have you on the show today and super excited to talk about Camp Bow Wow and what you do there. So I know that Camp Bow Wow is one of the largest pet franchises in the US and maybe even worldwide. And so I'd love you to tell us, our listeners, just a little bit more about Camp Bow Wow and also your career and your progression so far there.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. At Camp Bow Wow, we are the largest pet care franchise. We offer doggy daycare and boarding services at about 185 locations in the US and Canada. And camp is all about dogs having fun, being healthy and happy. And so they get to come to camp, play all day with their friends, get exercise, socialization, and they're monitored by our camp counselors to make sure they're safe and having fun. And many of our locations also offer training and grooming and enrichment services to help provide some additional mental stimulation for the dogs.
So awesome. I don't have any pets right now, but can I send my kids to that camp? Because I think that they would love it.
I'm sure they would, but right now we're only accepting dogs.
That's great. And you've been there for almost 8 years now. So you've seen a lot of that growth happen. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. We have been growing quite a bit. Even during the pandemic, we opened 11 camps last year. So it's really exciting to see, but I started 8 years ago, like you said, actually as an intern on the marketing team, and have just been growing with the company ever since. And now I head up the marketing team, our department. We focus on all of the national and branding strategy and all of the local marketing support for our franchise owners.
That's so awesome. I think that's an awesome success story to hear, and one that, start as an intern, make it all the way up and grow with the company to vice president of marketing. I think that that's great. And obviously you've done super well there because of that progression. But I think, especially everyone who's early in their careers, who has those types of aspirations as well, I think that's always encouraging to hear that it's possible, right? To do something like that.
For sure. Yeah. If you had asked me when I started as an intern if I would be in this situation less than 10 years later, I would have said, no way. That's not going to happen. I don't even think I'm going to be there 8 years later. But if you find the right company and you find the right people that you're working with and find people to support you along your journey, then anything is possible.
Awesome. That's great. Well, one of the things I love about Camp Bow Wow too is I think it's like one of those unknown or unrecognized kind of giants, if you will. Like you said, it's one of the largest pet care franchises. This is over $100 million brand that's out there with hundreds and hundreds of locations that you have. And I think that most people may not have heard of it or wouldn't realize that that this is a brand that's that big.
Yeah, definitely. You tell someone you work at Camp Out, oh, I think I've seen one. Do you work at the one down the street? I'm like, no, I actually work at our corporate headquarters. We have almost 200 locations, and people are often surprised to hear that. But our customers who use us, and usually people with dogs know about us, but people who know about us really love the service and have only amazing things to say about it.
That's so awesome. Well, with that backdrop, I'd love to jump into our topic today. And as you and I discuss what should we talk about today, you kind of threw out this idea of just the keys to a successful franchise marketing strategy. And so I want to dive into that. And I think that the one thing that I would say as we frame that, obviously Camp Bow Wow is a franchise, but I think that the model and what we're going to talk about today is so applicable for many types of businesses, especially businesses that have multiple locations, right? Mm-hmm. It might not be an official franchise, but so many businesses today are multinational or have different offices or locations. And so I think a lot of what we talk about today can apply whether, you're a franchise or not. So I'm excited to dive into that. Should we do it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome. Okay, so you kind of talked about this a little bit already, just the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic. I'm curious if you'll walk us through that a little bit, just to provide some of that context. What has that been like for your business, and what did you do from a marketing perspective, especially to support franchise owners during this pandemic?
Yeah, so it's definitely a bit of a curveball we got last year, but people's habits have changed. So people are working from home. Their dogs are right by their side under their desk the whole day, or they're not traveling. And those are two of the main things that we cater to. So people going into the office, being away from their dog for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, or people traveling and needing that trusted place for their dog to stay and have fun while they're gone. So that's definitely changed up a lot for us, and we're learning as we go still, but trying to meet those changing needs or the new normal with pet parents, and supporting our franchise owners along the way. These are business owners. They're severely impacted by any kind of shift in the economy and these types of customer changes. So
Yeah.
we're trying to support them in every way that we can to help them find that business, find that new business, get people who maybe are afraid to venture out to come back into camp with to give their dog that home away from home. Uh,
Yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense. It's so interesting to me to see how the pandemic has positively or negatively impacted different types of businesses. Like you mentioned, as you point out there, like as people are working from home, they're probably spending more time with their pets, and they're looking for a place for their pets to go when they have those big meetings or things coming up, or and I think that it's an interesting to see how that could have, sounds like, positively impacted your business due to the pandemic. Is that right?
Well, mostly people are thinking like they're staying at home with their dog. Their dog doesn't need to get out, but in reality, the dogs do. They
Yeah.
can build up some bad behaviors, some codependency if they are at home all day with the same people, or if they have other furry siblings. But it's important for dogs still to get exercise and socialization outside of the home. So Camp Bow is still really, really valuable for people, even if they are at home with their dog. We've had to shift messaging to try and get that message across to customers. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what, your dog is at home, but they really do need that exercise, that socialization. That need hasn't gone away, even though you're home with them all the time. And then
Yeah.
they can definitely be distracting or disruptive if you have a lot of meetings, conference calls, you're on Zoom all day, and your dog's begging you to go outside and play. That is a great opportunity to bring your dog to camp, but it's just kind of getting that message and that change in mindset of, oh, I'm home with my dog, but I still need to get my dog out and about.
Yeah, that makes total sense, actually, as you described that. So, walk me through that a little bit. Like, what was the main message that you were putting out there on behalf of your marketing pre-pandemic? And then how did that change after the pandemic hit?
So we've always been about the safety, health, and happiness of the dog. So that has been consistent from the very start of the business. And that has only become more important with COVID. And the buzzword is, safety and sanitation and all of that. So we've continued with that messaging, but we've had to focus in some other types of messaging. So before the pandemic, it was all about, for daycare specifically, your dog is lonely at home, they're bored, they miss you, and they could be destructive because they have all this energy that they don't know how to channel. So they're chewing your couch, they're eating your shoes, whatever it may be that a dog may do at home because they have separation anxiety or they're just straight up bored. So that was a lot of our messaging, being like, this is a great way to keep your dog occupied, entertained, socialize, exercise, all of that. You pick up a tired dog, you come home, you get to cuddle on the couch together. You don't have to run around with them at the dog park for 2 hours because they've been doing that all day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our focus beforehand. And then now it's more like, is your dog going stir crazy? We know humans are going stir crazy. Dogs are too. So get your dog out, get them back with their pack, the exercise and socialization, that's always a need that dogs will have. And limiting your own human interactions has limited dogs' interactions with other dogs and people. And that has a negative impact on dogs' health and happiness and their behavior too. So if your dog doesn't get regular socialization, it makes it harder to go out on a walk with them and encounter potentially unknown dogs or people, where they might get too shy, or if you want to have a puppy play date, that isn't going to go as well as you might think. So we've really tried to focus on those key aspects, that it's good for the dog, and it's a good break for the pet parent too, when you're stuck at home all day and having to handle all of the needs of the household. If you have kids, if you have a spouse who's working from home with you, and dogs or multiple dogs there, it's a lot going on. So we try to communicate, that camp can be the pet parent's partner in taking care of their dog.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, I want to transition a little bit. I think this is good. It's a good, context and understanding to see how that has, that pandemic has impacted your business and what that change in messaging has been. But I'm curious too, with just that model of multiple locations and, your company opening more and more locations every year, what has been your main role in supporting those franchisees, specifically when it comes to maintaining consistency across your marketing materials and your brand? I know that that's a big challenge for many franchises, right, who have multiple locations, or any business that has multiple locations. How do you maintain that consistency, across all of those materials that might be going out there? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's definitely a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. I don't think that the challenge will ever go away for anyone. It's just trying to manage it as well as you can. But we know as marketers that a strong, consistent brand is important to success. It builds customers' trust. It gives them that expectation level to expect when they go to a different facility of the same brand. So it's definitely something that we want to maintain, from marketing, from the brand level, the corporate level. It isn't always something that on the local level, the owners or their staff care as much about, or they don't think that something that they're doing, like a small deviation from the standards, isn't going to have a big impact. But when you multiply that by multiple deviations per franchise or per staff at that franchise, times 200 locations, 1,000 locations, 2,000 locations, whatever you have as a multi-location brand, that really does add up, and it can be detrimental to the brand if it's not maintained. So we really try to make it easy for our franchise owners to follow standards by giving them the materials, the resources that they need to market their business, so they don't have to look elsewhere.
I have for you is really around, I think, a challenge that so many franchises face, as well as, any company that has multiple locations. And that's really about, how do you manage maintaining a consistent brand when you have kind of the national and the local marketing? So talk to us a little bit more about, what does that look like for Camp Bow? What are the types of marketing activities that you're doing at a national and then a local level? And then I'd also love to just hear a little bit more about, what do you do to help ensure consistency across, those different campaigns?
Yeah, so it is always a challenge to maintain consistency, but we know it's so important to building a brand and creating that trust with customers. They always know what to expect. You're never caught off guard. It's creating that consistent, trustworthy experience. So it's always a struggle for us, but we try to make it easy for our franchise owners to stay on brand by providing them materials and resources, because they are doing local marketing. Our business is built on trust. We are caring for people's furry kids, so it's important that our camps locally are building relationships with the community, being that strong presence in the community, that trustworthy partner in pet care. And so they're out there attending events pre-COVID, obviously. They're building relationships with other businesses in the community. they're talking to people at dog parks, they're participating in adoption events, all of these things that help to build up their trustworthiness and their relationships in the community. And then they're also managing their own social media channels, posting photos of the dogs at their camp, the events at their camp, all of that we just couldn't support
Mm-hmm.
from the national level because those things are so personal
Mm-hmm.
and so local to that particular camp and its staff and its owner. But we do try to provide as many tools and resources and training as possible to make sure that our brand standards are being followed. And if we're providing enough of the stuff that they need and want and like to use, then they shouldn't have to look elsewhere or create their own materials that are potentially off brand. So the more that we can provide to them and give them those solutions that are going to keep them on brand, but also help them grow their business, then the less infractions that we'll see.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I mean, I think it's a challenge for any marketing or creative leader to maintain consistency across their organization. I think that only just multiplies when you're a franchise or multi-location business where, just thinking about all of the localization, the customization of marketing content that happens at that local level. Man, how do you maintain that? I think it's got to be completely overwhelming unless, like you said, you have the right tools and processes in place. And what I really like about what you said is you build that trust with the franchisees, right? I think that's probably so crucial and so key. And again, in any business, but especially in that franchise model or that multi-location model where franchisees need to know that they can depend on you to have the right materials and resources for them so that they come to you for help rather than trying to go somewhere else and create something on their own, which we all know what ends up happening, right? When that happens, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge that so many businesses face, but I think especially in franchises. And so it's interesting hearing your perspective on that. What would you say has been the biggest thing that has helped you and your team build trust with franchisees so they continue to know to come back to you instead of going off on their own?
When it comes to branding specifically and materials, we have a pretty awesome, more than pretty awesome, really awesome creative team who's making the stuff that our system wants to use. So they know that they can come and get something they could never create on their own because we have professional designers who have great vision and great ideas and really excellent skills in that. And so that is first off a way to draw them in is with the caliber of materials that we can provide from the corporate level. And then it's time consuming to create marketing materials. It's not something that you can just if you just throw it together, it's not going to look great. But if you want it to look good, it's going to take time and effort and thought put into it. But if we can create resources and have the library of materials they can use, then they know they can come there, check for that. There's going to be something that they need. If there's not something they need, they can request it or give us an idea that ultimately may help other owners in the system. So it's constantly, it's growing. It's listening to franchise owners, understanding what they're actually using, what's working, what's not working, what can be improved upon, what trends we're seeing so that we can keep building and growing and providing an excellent resource.
Awesome. I think that makes total sense. So, the next question I have for you is kind of just building on top of that is how do you think about local versus national marketing, right? A lot of what you're talking about is supporting franchisees. I assume is really helping them to do that local marketing, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's also this whole other aspect of, do you do national marketing? And I think every franchisee or every business really kind of is different in how they adjust that mix of local versus national. How do you think about that, and where do you spend your time as your marketing team?
So like you mentioned, it's a different mix for different brands like McDonald's or Subway, these huge brands with one on every other corner. They are pretty much exclusively national. They're also just giving you a sandwich. They're not caring for your fur child.
Mhm.
So the local stuff is really important for us. Kind of like I mentioned, the franchise owners getting out in the community to build up their trust, build up their credibility, build relationships with pet parents in the community. So the local side is very valuable for us. And on the national side, we do national marketing and advertising. Being a brand of a medium size, we are limited in options with the budgets that we have, but we focus mostly on digital because that is really the biggest bang for our buck, and it's trackable, it's measurable. We can target it really effectively to all of the markets where we have an open camp, so we're not wasting money spending marketing dollars in a place where no one could ever bring their dog to camp. So that is really our main focus from the national level, so we can grow brand awareness, increase new customer inquiries. We're doing social media advertising, YouTube, display. We've done connected TV in the past. We did it in the peak of the pandemic when everyone was glued to their couch watching Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime all day. So
Mhm.
that was a good strategy for us. But we definitely try to stay on those tactics that we can control who it's getting to,
Mhm.
and we can measure the outcome. And then we also do a lot with public relations. So trying to build up the credibility on the national level and build up awareness through sharing tips on pet care or Valentine's Day is coming up, here's how to show your pet some love, things like that, that we can share out to the media and get some positive news coverage around Camp Bow Wow nationally and then locally as well. We're pitching out local media outlets to help our franchise owners get coverage, get recognition, and build up their credibility as a local pet expert.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a good mix that you're doing there. So, as we kind of get close to the end here, Christy, and kind of wrap it up, I'm curious. What other advice would you offer to others who might be in similar boat as you, maybe a few years earlier, a little bit smaller brand, a marketing leader in a smaller multi-location or franchise business. If you could go back in time and give yourself advice a couple of years ago, what would those, few keys of advice be to help them be successful and get to a point where you're at today?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of advice, but a couple that I would point to, especially as it relates to our conversation. Marketing may be my whole world, but it's not our franchise owners' whole world. They have their staff that they have to manage and hire and train. They have operations to run. They have customer issues to deal with. So marketing is not often the first thing that they're thinking of. So we want to make it as easy as possible for them to market their business so that they can do so effectively, on brand, get results, all of that with less time and money investment on their part. So definitely figuring out, what are the ways that you can provide streamlined turnkey solutions to your franchise owners so that they can market with minimal effort. They, are closely watching their budget, making sure that you're helping them save money with effective tactics. You're providing those best practices. So really being that guiding light, as well as giving them things that they can use to be self-sufficient and be successful without spending their entire lives on marketing. So that's
I,
definitely one of them. And then just listening to understand what customers want, what franchise owners want, what everyone needs, what they respond to. Um, and there's always great ideas that come out of our system. That's one of my favorite things about being in a franchise system is that we get ideas from everywhere, from our owners, from camp counselors, from our local marketing coordinators at each of the camps. There's always a wide variety of ideas, and we get to share those with each other and learn from each other and keep getting better together.
Love it. I think those are awesome, awesome tips. And I think that they're so applicable for all marketers, regardless of the type of business that you're in. I think that often we forget as a marketing team that the best way to do marketing is to empower your employees, empower your people to go out and help do marketing on behalf of your company, right? And so whether it's a franchise owner or whether it's an employee or someone else across your org, being a good advocate for them and helping giving them the tools and resources to do that and listening to them, especially when they're in the trenches talking to potential customers and making sure you gain those insights is so crucial. And again, I think so applicable for all types of businesses. So I think that's excellent advice.
Yeah.
Well, Christy, this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and your story with us today. As we wrap up here, if there are listeners that want to get in contact with you or have follow-up questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can find me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Christy. And I hope you have an awesome time in Vail this weekend.
All right. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.